I think it's time to elevate the coaching industry from being a lot of kind of scarcity based, dreamy kind of things and using high pressure tactics to make people make moves that they wouldn't have made if they were fully informed. Well, today we are sharing a big shift in our brand, and it's all about doing what matters and supporting you in your coaching journey and transformation. My name is Amanda Kaufman, and welcome to Thoughts on a Thursday. And I thought today I would take you behind the scenes on some rebranding that we've been doing and why we're doing it, how we're doing it, what's motivating it, and how to think about branding in general. And my hope is that by listening to this episode, you'll be inspired to be even more intentional about how you're showing up with your coaching business and the decisions that you're making that are going to guide you and your eventual team members if you are still a solopreneur, and could really be inspiring if you are already off to the races and you feel like you can't make a pivot or a change. Okay, so let's dig into it. Let's unpack it. So I want to first start out with like, well, why are we rebranding? But before I do that, just a quick primer on what branding is, just in case you're like, yeah, but what do you really mean by that? Because I've been in no less than 5 different masterminds where somebody stood at the front of the room and said, here's what branding is. And they all had kind of vague or complicated explanations for what branding is. To the extent that I was so afraid of talking about it, I was so certain that I was going to get it wrong that I just kind of avoided the subject. And that's very much my brand. It's like, if it's too complicated for me to do it, it doesn't matter. I'm going to move on. And I can also be a little anti-establishment. So when people would say, this is so important, it's the most important thing, and then would follow up with their big fancy, let me consult you on branding package, I was honestly not into it. It wasn't a big vibe for me, but I think part of it was I needed to master my own understanding of what it actually was and what it really meant for me to give the importance to it that it really deserved. So let me unpack this for you. Branding is recognition. Branding is recognition. Another way of putting it is branding is association. So when somebody thinks of you or thinks of your service or thinks of the things you are doing, what do they correlate that with in terms of actions or behaviors or beliefs that they have in their own life? And I recently saw a really great walkthrough on branding by Alex Hormozy. I'll actually link that video below this one because it was so good at making a kind of a big idea more concrete. And so branding is like how people associate your product, your service, your company with an activity that they're performing and how it makes them feel or how it makes them look. Okay. And it drives behavior that person is going to take. And here's what's really interesting about branding and probably why I was avoidant of branding for the longest time is that it's motivating action away or toward your brand. And so it's kind of like, I remember growing up, a lot of my friends had preference for Pepsi. And then I went to a university that was a Coca-Cola campus. So meaning like they had the contract for all the vending machines. Coca-Cola had that contract in place. So there wasn't a Pepsi to be found. And the interesting thoughts that I remember going through my head, I'm like, but I like Pepsi. And I was like all loyal to Pepsi. And over time, I ended up becoming loyal to Coca-Cola because it was frequent and available on my campus. So I think that's a really interesting kind of a example from my own life. I think another example was when I shifted from being an Android user to an Apple user. Once somebody actually makes the transition to their association, they tend to stick with it unless they get a compelling reason to change. And One of the reasons why I moved more to like the Apple side of things is I liked the ease of use. I liked the smoothness of the interface. I liked that it was very pick it up and play with it. And I didn't value as much some of the things that I know a lot of my Android friends really value, which is, for example, having more flexibility on the platform and a bunch of other reasons why an Android user is a hardcore Android user. So at the end of the day, we're calling each other and we're staying in touch. I mean, I think I was in the early days of my coaching business, quite functional about how I thought about coaching. It's like, right, okay, so we've got a coaching process. We sit down together. I ask you questions. You ask, you think through stuff and then you get a better result. What else is there? And what I've realized over time is that coaching at a fundamental level really is a relationship. And it's a leadership type relationship where the coach is facilitating a process that the client finds value in and the client has alignment to. If the client does not find value in the relationship or have alignment to the process that you are leading them through, there's not going to be a very lasting relationship there, is there? So I understood the importance of a powerful relationship with my clients pretty early on, because I wouldn't get very far with coaching if I didn't figure that out eventually. But the concept of branding still sort of stayed out there. It was like really, really kind of vague and sort of hard to kind of put my finger on. But I did know for sure that whatever I did, however I moved through the world, it was really important to me to remain authentically expressed and to have freedom of my time and of my finances and of my association and where I spent time. Like, freedom was like top of the list for me. And whenever I heard about branding or branding was kind of presented to me, I thought, gosh, that's like a lot of work, a lot of time. It seems kind of expensive. And I wasn't really valuing what branding could actually do. Branding fundamentally changes the behavior of a person, moving them closer to or further from. And when you are able to share what you are associated with more often, more loudly, you're basically giving people a more authentic choice about whether they're going to follow you or not, because they're going to understand what you're really about or not. And so let's talk a little bit about the whys and the whats that have brought about kind of the change and the desire for me to do more knowledge digging and learning about branding. Why is that so important? I think reason number one is we've learned that it matters. And we've learned by taking a lot of action, going through a lot of process, seeing things win and seeing things fail. And one of the things we really learned how to do as a business is we learned how to advertise, which is amazing. I recommend it. It's a great skill. But all advertising really does is it gets you in front of eyeballs. It doesn't necessarily have somebody think, I want to associate with that more or less. That's the job of branding. And what I learned over time was that you can get a lot of attention, and you can get a lot of attention that even leads to behavior change if you're using advertising. But is it the desired relationship? Is it the desired association? And I was like, okay, are we sort of veering into, like being too manipulative? And what I realized is I'm like, what about being clear and thoughtful, right? Because I had ideas about what a high quality relationship was going to be with clients, informed by having lots of awesome client relationships. So by taking extra care to think about what's the association, the positive association that I want to have when people see communications from me, communications from my team, communications from my business, when they see those things, what is the association that they're making? I realized that the curation of the messaging, not just the words you choose, not even the photos you take, but the curation of what am I talking about? What's the value that I'm actually putting out here? What am I expressing as is important or less important that people are going to hold on to and realize like, oh, that's more like me. I want to be like that. And that connection piece, I realized that the curation of that is actually an act of courtesy. Because if you think about where the relationship's going to go as a coach, you're going to get like intimate, ideally. You're going to be sharing together in this process where the person's revealing their fears, what their challenges are, where they're experiencing difficulty. And if you don't have the courtesy of showing up with consistency, which does require intention, to let people know kind of what you're about up front, and then continue to let them know that all the way through the communications with intention, I realized I was like, gosh, that's actually less courteous, because what can happen is you can end up having an advertisement that gets placed. And let's say the advertisement is promising a result and you follow through on that with your funnel, but your unintentionality with it means that maybe you're emphasizing or de-emphasizing certain values or certain ways of being simply because you're unconscious of it. And then by the time you reach out to them, they're like, wait, this person's not the same as the person that was in the ad, is not the same as the person that was in the funnel, that's not the same as the person who's in the email. I'm out because I'm confused. And if there's one thing I've definitely learned over the years, the more confusing you are in your communication, the less of a service you're going to be doing for the person that you're building a relationship with, and the less likely that they're going to want to foster and deepen a relationship with you. Consistency is one of the most important aspects of trust. And that's one of the biggest learnings or things that I realized was like, oh my God, that's missing from my business. Is I've got different colored thing over here, from different colored thing over there, different word choices, different ways that I'm describing things. The inconsistency is raising questions and incongruency. OMG, I'm being sloppy with my communication. And that actually was the biggest flint for wanting to revisit the brand. The second big reason why is because I realized that we're in a really changing environment. So, for example, just 2 years ago, people were spending more time searching on Google for answers. And now what do? They pop up in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your AI of choice is. They pop it open and they ask the question of the AI. And it's going to be up to the algorithms to suggest the best option and alternative. It's not really, in my opinion, a viable strategy to say that I have the best widget. I have the best coaching process. Obviously, stand by your product. But what I'm saying is everybody's going to say that. Everybody's going to say that they're the best choice because they listen the best, or they're the most authentic, or they tell the truth the best. They're the truthiest truth tellers ever. And that's not necessarily differentiating, right? I think when people choose who they want to be friends with, it's going to be on the basis of shared perceptions, shared beliefs, shared vision for the future, shared mission. And, it's very much like how you make friends in real life. You've got people, coworkers, for example, that you're closer to, and coworkers that you're specifically not closer to. Why is that happening? And a lot of it has to do with brand. And that brand has to do with you making an assessment of like, is there a match between what I want, perceive, and believe, and what the other entity wants, perceives, and believes. And that alignment, that choosing, kind of brings me to one of the fundamentals that I've learned of business, which is all things being equal, people buy from their friends. And all things not being equal, people still buy from their friends. And it doesn't necessarily mean like your best friend that you grew up with. I mean, like you have to have a friendly and connected relationship with somebody to be trustworthy enough for a transaction to occur, much less the coaching relationship, which in my view is generally going to require much more investment than any dollars that are going into the transaction. So, okay. I think so it's just changing landscape. I think the relevance of having people have in mind that I choose you, Pikachu, when they make an ask of an algorithm is going to be way more relevant than just having the right keywords or having the right presence and the right placement. The third big piece of this actually has to do with more of a philosophy of where I believe the coaching industry is headed. And that is, I want great heart-centered coaches to feel far more permission to promote and engage in commerce with their own businesses. I'm seeing coaching get commoditized like crazy. There's huge companies now that are offering coaching services for a few dollars. It's becoming way more way more prolific for people to have a coach. So for you to build a entrepreneurial venture that gives you time freedom, that gives you financial freedom, is going to require you to do the work of understanding what is your unique value, what is your unique process that you're able to really stand apart from all those commoditized options, that people are going to choose you, Pikachu, because they have a really high quality relationship and they trust that they're going to be able to get more of what they like and they value from you versus choosing a commodity option. It's very much like looking at the example of, and this was in Alex Hormozi's presentation, and this is where it really hit home for me, was you could get a generic t-shirt for like $5. But if you go and get a Nike t-shirt, that's going to be what, $50? And why? What's the difference? The swoosh, right? The swoosh and the brand association. Nike as a brand has associated with winners and champions and people who don't give up and people who just do it, right? And so all those positive associations make it so that somebody's willing to spend $50 on a t-shirt that's near identical to the one that is $5. And it's because I think people believe and perceive that they're more objective in their decision making. But the truth is that brand association takes a long, long way on the value of what you're offering. And I know for sure that what we do at the Coaches Plaza is crazy and insanely valuable. And so that's why, as a CEO, I'm like, gosh, the thing that I must do to make sure that the Coaches Plaza not only survives, but thrives the next 10 years is I have got to build a stronger brand here. So that's what we're doing. All right. So let me introduce you to our 5 pillars that we've come up with that are reflective of our new approach. And these 5 pillars are going to guide all content, all interaction, all of our services, and this is, by the way, the role of brand is it's like the unified voice or the unified way that we do things that make us recognizable in the marketplace. So the first one is practical growth pathways. One of the biggest issues that coaches face right now is this sense of overwhelm. So we're here to give you simple and effective systems that it's like they layer one on top of another, and they're like Lego blocks that you build up over time. And it gets you the results without giving you all of the overwhelm. If there's one thing that just drives me super nuts in the coaching industry, it's the overcomplication of very simple tasks. Our core methodology, meet people, talk to people, fit with people, coach to people, it's not going anywhere because the truth is my clients who have had the most success, they have simplified down. They've taken all the things that the gurus say and they've just like shelved it for a minute and just did what mattered. And they were able to not only connect with amazing people who became their clients, but serve at a higher level because they were able to help their clients deal with this overwhelm issue. So practical growth pathways are here to stay. So that's our first pillar. The second pillar is authentic client-centered marketing without the salesy feel. So one of the biggest things that we've heard from our community loud and clear is I don't want to dread promoting my business. I don't want to be one of those people with my business. And a lot of coaches are opting out and simply choosing not to promote their amazing services because they're so concerned with harming the consumer. And I totally appreciate that because that is very much where I came from as well. I didn't want to take advantage of anybody. I only wanted to serve people who authentically wanted my help. But here's the other side of the coin. Without having some kind of a sales process, one of my mentors says, if you don't have a sales process, you're going to learn the process they use for not buying. And I think that that's really, really powerful. So we're really committed to helping you attract dream clients, like people that you love to work with without having to sacrifice who you are. We want you to be authentic. We do not want you to feel like you have to use gimmicks or hard sales. And, pairing that with practical growth pathways, we can show you exactly how to do that because that's exactly how we've operated and done millions of dollars. Thank you very much. Okay. The next pillar is just having a clear, structured learning approach so that we can drive immediate impact. So the idea is that every pillar or every piece of content is meant to be straightforward. So we're continuing to build resources, and we're doubling down on the instances where we've built resources that are designed to be practical and implementable. So you can make real progress and not just feel like you have to constantly keep collecting information. Now, we're going to keep producing content, but our content, like I said, it's going to continue to be even more actionable, even more implementable, and you're not just sitting there kind of Netflixing your content unless you want to. You actually have things that you can put into practice right away. The fifth pillar is empathy and understanding of financial realities. And this is really important to me. It took me some time to get the wording quite right of what it is. But the thing I'm seeing in the coaching industry is I'm seeing a lot of people who have this desire to help. And then the solution that is being sold to them is often not a match for their authentic financial capacity or their capacity for learning on pace. And the result of that is that a lot of coaches end up getting overextended financially. And so that kills their cash flow, and it kills their confidence, it kills their profitability. And so what I'm saying is the coaching industry is somewhat killing the coaching industry in a lot of ways. Now, I think that you should charge, well and high for your services that you are spending all of your time and your energy in building and cultivating. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have high ticket coaching. I think there's a place for it. And the idea is that we are going to provide high value support that respects your journey and your budget, which means that we're going to have more options that you can join at a lower ticket level, medium ticket, as well as the high ticket. So for years, I really just stayed in the lane of high ticket coaching. And I think that for the season, for the time, that was the thing to do. But I also know that I had to say no to a lot of people working with me because I practice something I call responsible influence. And what I've decided is I'm just going to bring that to the forefront in the brand, that responsible influence means that we promote the idea that you should know where your budget is. You should know where your credit is. You should know where your cash flow is. You should know if you're not getting a return on your investment, because you should change your behavior to help you to earn more money, to build your audience, and do the things that actually matter. Hello, do what matters to write your position, And I've had plenty of clients that worked with me on a high ticket level that they were like, I don't know what to do. I need to make money. I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, have you considered getting a job in the meantime? And we call it a rainbow job when you do that, because I'm not saying that you should give up on your dreams ever, but I'm saying that some people tacitly do because they think that they have failed if one program didn't give them all of the answers of the universe and everything. That's 42. And if you know, you know. But I think also that there's a lot of ways that we can serve at the Coaches Plaza for a nominal investment every single month. And we can do it in a way that we're excited to do, and that you are not going to feel that pinch or that pain of high ticket if you're not ready. And the other thing is that if you are doing high ticket, sometimes just adding an additional perspective can be the exact prescription that you need. So, there's a saying in high ticket sales that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. But I think a lot of people they kind of rely on the trust of the one, doctor in this metaphor, not a real doctor. Just metaphorically speaking, it's okay, well, I'm only going to trust you. So I'm only going to have this one conversation with this one mentor, this one person. And that's for sure not how I've done things. I've been able to build a business that's grown considerably beyond, my expectations as a pivot from a corporate career to an entrepreneur. But I definitely didn't do it listening to one mentor. In fact, I've had at this point dozens of coaches and mentors. And so another reason why I want to offer affordable coaching options is because I think it's healthy to have a second opinion, especially if you're making especially if you're making like big life decisions around becoming an entrepreneur, around like what's your brand going to be, around who are you going to serve, how are you going to serve them, how do you do this in a way that works really well for your lifestyle, and to answer all of those nuanced questions. I personally have practiced and I want to bring forefront in my brand that it's okay to have a patchwork quilt of mentorship to keep you warm. It's cool to have more than one perspective, and even if the perspectives, conflict, it's awesome because then you get to ask a question. You get to say, well, why is this a conflict? What are the exceptions to the rules? Where would this apply to me that it doesn't, that it might not otherwise apply to me? And I think blind followership is basically one of those things that has prevented the success of a lot of people because they tell themselves that they're focusing, but at the same time, they're not getting their fundamental questions asked because they're not giving themselves permission to get and gain additional perspective. So if having a lower ticket way to access being able to ask questions and, the convenience of membership is going to help with that, I think that's amazing. And if I'm the primary coach that people choose, I have higher service level options that are available, but I believe that I can be successful economically and still serve all of the realities that our industry is authentically facing. And that's why this fifth pillar of empathy and understanding of financial realities is so important. Okay, so I think one of the ways that we're going to be bringing these pillars to life is just structuring content to just serve you better. So we have built a lot of content over the last particularly 6 years. And so one of the commitments that we have is like, make sure that the content is relevant, it's timely, and it's concise for the purpose. So this is a little bit of a longer episode of the Thoughts on a Thursday, or maybe it's not, I don't know. But the idea is that I want to make sure that what you're getting out of this is educational and you can action it. You can even like steal the pillars. You can rewind, write down all the pillars, make them your pillars, and have that as a starting point for your business. I don't care. I think that that's a great idea. I think the second big piece is I do not want there to be secrets or holding back, because I just want you to know what's working the best for us. What have we tried? What has not worked really well? And I really want you to find real success, not because you're copying everything that I do, but because I'm so open with what we have done. Maybe you'll see in the shares that I give a place where I like missed, like I missed a perspective or I missed a practice that would have made that strategy successful. I'm open to all of it. And the whole idea here is to build a stronger relationship with you, because the content is not just razzle dazzly, it's actually, again, actionable. And I learned from Frank Kern, if you want to help other people and you want people to pay you, the best way to show that you can help them is to genuinely help them. So that's the philosophy there. I think one of the biggest issues in the coaching space is there's so much fluff. There's so much fluff out there. There's so much distraction. It's hard to know what's real. It's hard to know what's useful, what's helpful, and what's timely. And so I think what I really want to see other coaches do, if you're listening to this episode, maybe like make a note of this for your next strategic meeting, is prioritize real value-driven content that prioritizes relationships over transactions. And I mean, I like value, not because you're prescribing the value, but valuable because you've surveyed your audience, you've asked the questions, you're taking the conversations that you're having in sales calls and in coaching calls, you're using that to actually inform your content strategy and your product strategy so that you can actually have some of the world's best coaching, because it's just in such high resonance to the people that you serve. Like, that is so huge. I think it's time to elevate the coaching industry from being a lot of kind of scarcity based, dreamy kind of things to and using high pressure tactics to make people make moves that they wouldn't have made if they were fully informed, and I think that that's super, super important. So how can you engage with this new brand? Well, congratulations, you're doing it. If you've watched or listened to this episode, then you're already here. Like, that's amazing. Make sure you're following our podcast. Make sure you are engaging with our regular content. I go live on Instagram every Monday at 9 a.m. Central, and I post an opportunity for you to submit your questions to me. You can ask me anything, like literal open book. Every Friday, I post to my Instagram stories, and I'm super excited to support you there. My goal is to make this content independently valuable. And I will occasionally let you know when we are opening the doors for the membership that I mentioned earlier, or when there's other opportunities. But I just really want you to know that joining any program of ours is an option and it is an investment. And I'm so excited to support you in a high-powered way. But if for you right now, just like listening to these words and tuning into the next episode is where you're at and that's your speed, I love you. I'm glad you're here. All right. So like, let's not cloud our relationship with like this. Oh, if I'm on our email list, then I have to buy everything that comes across my inbox. It's like, no, if it's right for you, you will know. And by the way, when I send emails, a lot of my emails are just helpful insights along the way. And I'm not afraid to sell, but I am mindful that I want any relationships or any sales that come out of this content or this work to be coming from this place where we care about each other. And I think that is missing in a lot of what people are engaged in and doing right now. So I really do want you to stay connected, follow along with this brand evolution. I really invite you to engage with it, even hold us accountable to it. If there's places or spaces that, still kind of have that old feel that isn't quite yet lined up to the 5 pillars that I talked about, feel free to send us an email at support@thecoachesplaza.com and highlight it and let us know so we can be aware of it. And we'll let you know as changes are continuing to roll out. I think the real value of all of this is it's all about doing what matters for us. For you, for the coaching industry, for all of our clients that we're serving, all of our future clients that we're serving. And this rebrand is really all about what genuinely serves you at the highest level. And I really just appreciate you taking the time to listen to me wander on about this. This isn't just a rebrand. It's a new standard in coaching content, and it's here to stay. So let's do what matters and let's build some real success together.